Hey, everybody, welcome to Scouting the League and welcome into the draft room. Today, we are joined by Fran Duffy to talk defensive backs in this 2026 NFL draft. Most of these guys we expect to be in the draft come next year, but you always never quite know where it's all going to end up. But we'll talk about them anyway. Always fun having draft conversations and with somebody that knows it as well as Fran does and catch up on all things that Fran's doing. Before we do that, though, let me remind you to like, subscribe, and share this podcast wherever you are listening and watching. If you are a glutton for punishment and like that video portion and want to look at, Fran's better looking than I am. So again, if you want to look over there, but go like, subscribe. Again, if you love football, you love the draft, you love this content. There's probably somebody else in your life that does as well. Make sure you go share this with them. Leave us your comments. Let us know what you think. Respectfully, let us know how you disagree. We love the comments. We love the feedback on all these players, whether they're for your team, against your team, maybe going to be on your team next year. Lots of fun talking DBs. Make sure you go check out our past draft room episodes where we talk defensive line with Dane Vandernat and Brian Zekis, some really fun pass rusher talk. Well, you've got to have guys to cover on the back end as well, what we will get to today. Make sure you go check out all our other podcast archives, our video content, as well as every episode we have up during the week now. It is a fun time. Fran and I are talking about fresh film. We talked about that with Jordan Reed of ESPN last week. There's no better time to be a football fan. So make sure you're getting that football content right here with people that know football here on Scouting the League. Fran, last time we had you on, it was a new role with All City. You're now a little over a year in. You're doing lots of draft content. Catch us up from a year ago to now, all that you're doing.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on again, Rodrik. Yeah, it's been a really fun year, just over a year. It was late August last year when I jumped from the Eagles to All City, and it's been awesome, man. I mean, look, I kind of look at last year as far as like my draft coverage is year zero, just because jumping in midstream, I was a little bit late to the party, but this year was able to do a lot more legwork in the summer on a lot of these prospects. And while I still have 1 foot in pro, 1 foot in college, still focusing a little bit on the Eagles, much more in tune with what's going on around the country from a college football and NFL draft standpoint. So I've been churning out video content, print content, audio content, a little bit of everything. It's been a blast so far the first 12 months.
Yeah, no, again, if you want good content put out there, make sure you're following Fran. He is at F Duffy NFL on X. Again, if you find my site, I've probably retweeted, I've reposted, but you can find Fran on X. Again, we'll get to a little bit of that Eagles talk. Again, maybe a closer game week 1 than most Eagles fans were comfortable with. The Cowboys team that looked better than a lot of people. So again, we'll get to all that. But again, getting into the draft talk, and interesting what you said right there. The balance of college to pro, again, it's remarkable. Even when you're in a building, if you're a college scout out on the road, you completely lose track of what NFL teams, rosters, moves, all that kind of stuff. And then the same thing, if you're in pro, you really have you don't get a good landscape, good snapshot of the draft really until you're done with free agency come about February or March. So again, really a different balance there. Fran, you're really focusing more on the draft this year. That is really going to be where your content is focused while still doing some Eagle stuff. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say it's going to be like 70-30, 65-35. I think as long as I'm doing draft coverage, I will always keep a good eye on the NFL, even in season, off season. It certainly dials back when you get into the spring. But by the time I get back into the summer, I always want to make sure, like, hey, you know what? Let me just watch all of, Matthew Stafford's dropbacks. Let me watch all of Will Anderson's pressures, or even like, because to me, it's not necessarily, oh, this is what a top 5 edge rusher looks like. This is what a top 5 left tackle looks like in the NFL. I think it's really important to have an understanding of this is what a fourth corner looks like in the NFL. This is what a backup guard looks like in the NFL. Because when I'm doing evaluations on all these college players, I remember like early on in my career and watching a guy, I'm like, this guy, like, he doesn't have the good enough feet. He's not gonna be able to play. But then you watch and you're like, oh, there's actually 5 guards in the NFL that had worse athleticism than this guy and are getting by and have playable traits. So to me, I think I will always be watching NFL film year round. No matter what my role is covering the draft, but that it's definitely a tough thing to make sure you straddle right.
Yeah, and that is always the case. Again, your top 100 players, you say in the draft, top 100 again, you could grab a lot of people off the street and be like, "Yeah, that's a good player." Like they're going to that may be all they can tell you, but they're going to be able to tell you that's a good player. It's those that next 150 that get drafted, and then again all your UDFAs, hey, these guys have the traits. They have some snaps that say they can do it. It's about the consistency, about any of the number of different scouting factors. And again, that's where the scouting gets really fun. That's where your background, you've watched enough Pro Bowl, you know what, again, that fourth, fifth, and practice squad developmental corner, wide receiver, that, college tight end that's become a, serviceable offensive tackle in the NFL
Yep.
looks like. And again, that's where the draft, the scouting, the development stuff is really fun. Looking at the big picture, and a franchise. You were part of a franchise with the Eagles that does a pretty good job of that. Again, Neil Stratton's put out his most recent stuff with the Rap, and the Eagles were one of the really 3 to 4 unanimous teams. It's like, hey, who does a good job developing talent, bring him in? Where do you want to send a player on the practice squad as opposed to have them be in the 53rd? The Eagles were one of those, along with a couple of these others. So you've been in a good spot to see it. So let's get into it. Let's get into the draft room with some of these players. We're talking DBs, primarily corners, I believe, today. Going to start with those cover guys. Again, have a good pass rush, have good interior pressure. Your corners will look better. Hey, have some good corners. Your pass rush will look a little bit better. Again, the Eagles have drafted a couple good ones. I think they're kicking the tires this week on Mike Hilton, is what I read. Always turning over rocks. Who are some guys come 2026? Maybe who's the number one guy? Who is kind of your top tier of guys, and where do you want to start with these corners?
Yeah, I've been pretty excited about the corners that I've watched so far for this group. I would say the number one name for me is Clemson's Avion Terrell, a player whose brother I know you're familiar with, AJ
Very
Terrell,
familiar,
down
yeah.
there at the Atlanta Falcons. But Avion Terrell, watching him in the fall or in the summer rather, I was really really excited by his film. We can get into why, but Jermod McCoy from Tennessee would be another one I would throw in there as another one I think could be a pretty high level starter moving into the NFL. Malik Muhammad from Texas. AJ Harris from Penn State, just a few names. And then a couple guys that have flashed early on this season that I'm excited about. Mansour Delane from LSU, a transfer from Virginia Tech. And then Jermaine Matthews, first-time starter with Ohio State. A good start for him back in week 1 against the Texas Longhorns.
Yeah, it's always, we're in a funky spot here. Most teams, again, have 2 games in. Week 0 is week 0. Most teams have 2 games in at this point. Ohio State, LSU, both a big game in. And it's tough because you start wanting to do these players, and depending on where you're at in the draft process, like I am done with 2024 film, but I also want to take a sneak peek just to get leading into whatever game. Because again, for some scouts, for us guys on the outside, you're waiting for that fresh film to come in. It's something we talked about with Jordan. There's nothing better than getting to this week, maybe next week, and you start getting all the 2025. Again, LSU Clemson, you're going to get a bunch of really good tape from that. For Ohio State defense, maybe the offense, different story. Ohio State defense against Texas week 1 with Jermaine Matthews, with Noah Igbinosun. You get some good tape on that back end. So again, getting that fresh tape, but you still, again, just like every team will do, you're going to watch some 2024. A lot of these players, it's already been done. You're going to go watch 2023. So again, let's start with Avion Terrell. Again, a player that, an AJ that was, you call him a clean prospect coming out of Clemson back when we drafted him in Atlanta. It was a funny one because he was really not a name connected with us a whole lot through the process. Thomas ran the board, so even us scouts didn't really know exactly where we were going to end up with him. There were a couple other corners that they kind of maybe were pinpoint, but again, AJ's been a really good pro, a little bit longer, a little bit lankier, a little bit different stylistically than Avion. What do you like about Avion? What did you see that was really positive with him initially here?
Yeah, it's funny because corner is a position that is often referred to as a stopwatch position, right? You're looking at height, weight, speed. For me, the competitiveness, like the toughness, the instincts and ball skills really are what move the needle for me at that position. And while look, when we combine the two, now we're cooking with gas. But to me, like I'm always going to trend more towards the guys that play with an edge, that play with that confidence, that swagger, and that's certainly there in spades with Avion Terrell. And you're always kind of looking like what are some of the anecdotes that you can pluck from the film, or reading through press conference quotes and things like that. And, talking with sources. There was a moment last year they're playing a game in November against the Citadel, right? So it's one of those like late season, kind of gimme, relax games late in the year for some of these Power Five teams. So they're up big. It's 3rd and 5 late in the second quarter, and Citadel breaks off a big run. And Avion Terrell hawks the guy from behind, a 50-yard run from the backside, strips the ball, gives the ball back to the offense, right? And it's just like those kinds of plays. You're like, all right, like this guy is that kind of player. Now what else are we talking about? Well, he's a really fluid athlete. He's got speed to carry vertical routes. The one area where I do want to see him get a little bit better when I go through more of the film from this season, when just kind of getting back in phase and then trying to turn and find the ball. I think ball skills kind of get lumped into all just one big like kind of umbrella term. And some people, they see one clip on social media or on TV and are like, oh, like he's got to turn and find the ball. Sometimes it's right to play through the receiver's hands, and you got to face up and you got to play it that way. But other times when you get hip to hip and you're in position to turn and find it, he could be a little bit late to find the ball at times. He was penalized 7 times last year, 3 times in the Texas game in the college football playoffs. So those are some areas where I do want to see him clean up, but this is a really hyper aggressive player, a hyper competitive player. The off man instincts are really, really strong. I do think he's got a press man skill set, but at 5'11", 180, not every team is going to look at him that way. And that's what he's listed at, as 5'11", 180. So I know you've touched on that recently, that what they're listed at typically can be fudged a little. So if you assume he's 5'10" and change and 175, he's going to be on the undersized end of the spectrum. But to me, that's just a hyper competitive player. NFL bloodlines, a lot to like with his tape and his profile.
Yeah, again, in the NFL anymore, you're going to have 3 starting corners. Have to have 3 starting corners, and again, Avion's one of those guys that he's played a lot outside. He's going to have a lot of outside matchups this year that you can go to, but he's also got that, again, the stature that you would traditionally think about kicking inside against the really good slots. He's an aggressive run defender, as you touched on. So again, he becomes that guy where, hey, maybe is he a true outside number 1? No, but I can live with him as a number 2. We can maybe hide him a little bit. We can maybe play, man on man. We can put our bigger, longer corner when we're playing those bigger, longer X and Zs, but we can kick him inside, so he's got some scheme versatility. And like you said, he can play off man. Again, he's got a lot of good traits. Probably a first-round corner. Again, he is certainly a nice name everybody likes in the first round. And that becomes one of the fun things with corners is, a lot of positions, you're a first rounder scheme regardless of where you go. Corners, you can have very scheme specific corners go in the first round that some teams may have a 3rd round grade on. But again, because he fits you really well, again, for us in Atlanta, that was a long time the way we kind of ran our defense. Keanu Neal was not a first rounder for a lot of teams, but he was a perfect fit. Same thing, Deion Jones, where he went, was a specific scheme fit. And you go back over the years with Dan Quinn, with Pete Carroll, with some of those specific defenses. Is Avion the only one that's like, hey, this guy could just play wherever? Is that Jermon McCoy coming off the knee that, hey, if he can get himself back right, he elevates him back up into that category as a do-it-all? Or again, with a guy like Muhammad or Igbenos, a little bit longer, a little bit lankier, a little bit more scheme specific? Are we starting to get into those guys?
Yeah, I think that McCoy and AJ Harris, kind of have that scheme versatility where I'd feel good about. I think then we start to dip into like, all right, I really want the right situation for an Igbenosin or for a Mansour Delane, even a Malik Muhammad, and we'll get into him as well. I kind of look at that like not every team is going to be overly, enthusiastic about what his next level prospects are, but I do think McCoy and AJ Harris have that kind of some skill set similarities where I do think that they could fit a number of different schemes.
Good. Well, which one of those guys you want to talk a little bit more? McCoy, obviously, he's getting a lot of love. I believe Jordan Reed had him as his number 1 corner coming in. I was a little lower based on my film work on him last year. Again, I didn't quite like the fluidity. I thought the twitch showed up some. I thought he was just a little inconsistent with his technique. Again, you see some stuff there. All stuff, again, if you're a scout, you're writing down, hey, 2024, he was this, flash this. I want to see this, which again goes back to, hey, let's get some film. Let's get some good film. Tennessee is going to have a lot of balls thrown on them because they're going to be scoring a lot of points. So where are you at with Jermon McCoy? What do you need to see and what have you seen?
Yeah, I would agree with you with some of the athletic limitations. I think when you're looking at McCoy, he's a bigger corner. He's listed 6 foot 193, which is above average size, in terms of what he's listed at right now. We'll see what the official numbers are once he comes out. If he does come out this year, he'll be 20 years old on draft night. So this is a young player who's been productive. He had 4 picks last year. 3 of his 4 picks came inside the 5-yard line. He's got some of the same issues with Terrell, where in terms of like trying to find the ball late, get his eyes back around. But when he's top down, he plays the ball and can finish at a really, really high level. He took the ball away from Ryan Williams on the goal line in the Alabama game. Like, he's got that ability to climb the ladder, contest those throws, and come down with those type of throws. And he kind of reminded me a little bit of like a Deron Bland, Trayvon Diggs type of like bigger Dan Quinn type of corner that could kind of take the ball away from that standpoint. I agree with some of the athletic limitations. I will, again, going back to the types of players I typically trend towards. He plays with a ton of fire, a ton of energy, extremely competitive with receivers. He's going to mix it up in every way, shape, and form. He's also just got really good zone eyes. Like, I like him more in a zone scheme than in a man scheme. I mentioned some of the limitations from like a quickness, fluidity standpoint, but in terms of playing in cover 3, playing in cover 4, one of the things that I'm always looking for is like, okay, yeah, you can overlap. You got 2 vertical routes going your side. You have that ability to split the difference, but that the other team knows, hey, you know what? They're probably in cover 4 here. These are the plays we're going to dial up to attack this defense. If you as a corner know the plays that the other team wants to, hey, these are their cover 3 beaters. These are their cover 4 beaters. So now you're mid rep and you see these guys are jumping throws and getting into passing lanes. I saw that from McCoy as a sophomore last year. So that gives me a lot of hope for what he's going to be down the stretch. Right after the season ended for Tennessee last year, he was working out at home and tore his ACL. He was back on the practice field in August. And so just being able to see this guy come back, I don't know what he's going to look like from a fluidity standpoint. I actually haven't watched any 2025 tape yet on McCoy, but from what I watched last year, I thought he could be a starting corner in the NFL. Definitely more of a perimeter, like boundary type of corner. But I liked what I saw from him on film. Not a high level starter, but a guy that I would feel good, like getting in the back end of round 1, like that type of level of player.
Yeah. Those ball skills and ball awareness is the way I've always split those. Again, there's a lot of people that split them that same way. And this guy, that next level thinking, again, that's part of what has made Pat Surtain so good is, again, his next level thinking, jumping routes, all that kind of stuff. Again, you often talk about those guys at safety a little bit more, corners. They just go cover that dude. But again, McCoy has some of that. And again, that also becomes the guy that, hey, if he ends up matching up inside a little bit against these guys, again, which will happen. Again, we all know what motion does, and bringing in offense is going to try to dictate it. You better be able to match inside. And if you've got those next level instincts, you really do some good things. Let's hit on both of these Ohio State corners. We all knew about Igbinosun. Big, sexy, pretty looking athlete that had a lot of penalties last year playing opposite of Denzel Burke. And yet the traits are undeniable. Again, if he could just keep his hands to himself.
Yep.
And then we come out the Texas game this year, and scouts knew about Jermaine Matthews, and maybe the national scene all of a sudden learned about Jermaine Matthews, getting an interception, making some good plays. Talk about those Ohio State corners, what you like about them, and kind of how they're similar and different.
Yeah, I mean, Igbinosun is body beautiful, right? I mean, you're talking 6'2", over 190 pounds in terms of the listed size. 4-year college starter, began his career at Ole Miss. He played there as a true freshman, started 10 games, then transfers up to Ohio State. So, I mean, he comes into this year with 39 starts. So if he plays a full season, this is a guy that's has been through a lot of battles out on the perimeter. You mentioned the handsiness. I mean, 16 penalties last year. It's a lot of penalties.
A lot of penalties.
That can be tough to overcome. Has not had a ton of ball production over the course of his career, and that always kind of worries me for the guys that have played a lot of ball. Like, I want to be able to see that kind of show up, and there are some cases where, like Trent McDuffie didn't have a ton of ball production at Washington. Obviously, he's turned into a really good corner. So it's not a universal thing, but that is a position. I tend to feel this way about defensive prospects in general. Like, I want to see guys that are around the ball, that have proven to just kind of be, the Johnny on the spot type of player. I don't know that I've always seen that from Igbinosun. Now, part of that could be like the penalties are going to take away some of those numbers, some of those plays that could have been PBUs had you just kind of trusted your technique. But I think that's probably my biggest area of concern with Igbinosun. But if he's a guy that if he puts it all together, let's say he gets penalized 3 times this year, 4 times this year, and the production levels go up, he's going to have the traits where he's going to go high. So he is certainly a guy to kind of track in that way. Comparing him to Jermaine Matthews, Matthews is not the physical profile. He's listed 5'11", 190. He's not like this pure like height, weight, speed guy. Like he is more smooth than explosive. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think that he's got great recovery speed. What he does have is outstanding zone awareness. Really, some of the things I mentioned earlier, with the Tennessee kid with McCoy, I think that you saw that in small spurts, small sample size with Jermaine Matthews that showed up this past or in week 1 against Texas, where he's passing off routes and he's got really active eyes. He's got a feel for the offense, wants to be able to attack them at every level of the field. And competitiveness, I thought he checked the box. So I'm excited to watch a little bit more. I do want to see a little bit more tape where I feel good about giving him that pure starting grade, but I do see an NFL player. To me, he kind of reminded me a little bit in terms of like body type and some of the area. I really liked Cam Sutton when he was at Tennessee, a guy that had some inside-outside flexibility. I kind of see that with Jermaine Matthews. He could be that level of player.
Yeah, no, that's I mean, you start getting that comparison. It's good. He's going to have a chance again. One of these guys, we're going to see both of them. A team's going to pick on Noah. A team's going to pick on Jermaine. So we're going to see the ball go up against them. They've obviously got good competition, expectations. The ball is going to be coming out because of that Ohio State pass rush and what they do with those linebackers. So we will see those guys tested, which is good. And again, the penalty, if Noah can just answer those questions, he's going to find himself in the first round because the traits are all really good. Jermaine just has to keep building. Again, the fluidity really stands out to me. I think you nailed that one on the head. As we wrap up, there's one more guy. Again, as you watch a draft class, as you watch positions, there's always players that just pop like, man, that's kind of one of my guys. Again, and it's easy on the outside because we can take those guys and we don't do anything with them. When you're with the team, you kind of have to back off. Scouts, it's tough to have my guy because you don't want to, get too emotional on it. But Malik Muhammad at Texas, again, he was one as I watched that Texas roster prior to the Ohio State game, watched him over the summer. Again, a team that lost a ton in there on that defense that still had high expectations. This is a returning starter. He's a guy that I really like. Again, as we've talked, again, a floor ceiling guy with some nice traits. What do you think about Malik?
I'm gonna be honest. When I watched him and I first get eyes on him, he's listed 6 foot. My guess is he's gonna be under 6 foot. He's listed 188. My guess is he's gonna be listed under 188 by the time we get to pre-draft cycle. He's matched up. They traveled him with Jeremiah Smith in week 1 against Ohio State. Jeremiah Smith has drawn comparisons to like Andre Johnson, Julio Jones in terms of like height, weight, speed for days. Malik Muhammad has no business matching up and consistently competing with Jeremiah Smith, and all he did was compete with Jeremiah Smith that entire game. I really, really like Malik Muhammad. Now, he is at that size. I don't know, like you tell me, Rodrik, like he 4.5s. To me, like I think the recovery speed, the time speed, it could be a little bit of a question there, which, the same thing happened with Kamari Lassiter when he came out of Georgia in 2024, where it's like, oh, like good football player, hyper competitive, really good instincts. The ball skills are there. This kid doesn't have great production, but he had a great play in that game where you see the ball skills, you see the time, so it's there. But man, like in terms of like a height, weight, speed standpoint, there are going to be some teams that look at him and like, yeah, like he can't play for us. So could he fall to the second round? Could he fall into when you get into the day 2 range? But man, he's just a really good football player, kind of like a Roger McCreary type of situation too. Like I really liked Roger McCreary when he was coming out of Auburn. He's turned into into a reliable player at times for the Titans in his career. Lassiter obviously got off to a great start. I love Tre'Davious White for a lot of the reasons that we're talking about. I want to watch more of Muhammad before I started putting that comparison on him because I was really high on Tre'Davious White back in 2017 out of LSU. But I think you're talking about like that ballpark of player. I really like Malik Muhammad.
Yeah, no, the one when I was doing his 2024 film, I actually thought he played bigger than listed, which was one of those things that again he plays big, he plays long. Again, Jeremiah Smith at 6'3", 6'4", like again, there's no back down. And again, he didn't look like he dwarfed in comparison, which again, you always want to see that with the corners. And again, who knows what he ends up listing at. I think again, with the way they test, I think he'll get under 4.5. He'll just check that box. Again, with that Texas secondary, it's going to be interesting because they do have some, we'll say, newer starters elsewhere where they may just say, hey, we're not worried about that one and throw the ball away from him. So production will be a question. But again, like you said, he's got a lot of tape over the years. There's going to be a lot of cut-ups, a lot of POAs, a lot of stuff for teams to go back and look at and see, hey, there's a lot of good matchups for them. And again, it's all for this year. It all starts with that week 1 matchup. And again, we will see it throughout the SEC schedule he plays. He's going to see some good dudes. So he's going to be a fun one. Again, could keep climbing up. Again, we'll come back to this conversation come combine and draft time and see where we're at, see if we're still excited about him because he's a fun one. But again, 4 to 5 corners first round. That's typically what it is. Is that kind of with this group, this early look group? Again, there's going to be some poppers. There's going to be some guys coming up. Are we thinking, hey, it's going to be another 4 to 5 year first round corner guy?
Yeah, I think so. And maybe look, we saw Travis Hunter, as a receiver corner go like super high. I don't know that any of these guys are going to go quite that high. I think Avion Terrell, like you're probably talking like for me personally, like top 15.
Right,
I
kind
think
of
in
that
that
middle
area.
teens.
Yeah, at that size is going to be the big thing. I think that'll be the question mark. But the other corner we didn't talk about that is being. I just haven't done enough work on him to feel good about it. Is DJ McKinney? I know he's gotten some love publicly about going that high, but I haven't done enough work to feel good about that projection. But I do think that we're going to see a few of these guys go in the first round.
Good. Well, that just means we're gonna have to come back doing another episode with DJ, catch up on Malik, all these guys, find out how many penalties Noah's gotten. Again, see who the late poppers are. It's gonna be really fun. Again, that's what we're week 2 of the college season, and we got a lot of film left to watch. Again, long time until grades are gonna come due, and when the season's done. And again, for most of these teams, I think every team that we talked about here today truly have playoff aspirations.
Yeah.
Again, even Texas and Clemson fully expect them to be back there, and they've lost a game. Clemson made it real interesting versus Troy, but again, ultimately get it done. Obviously, LSU, Penn State, big time expectations. Ohio State, of course. Tennessee, if they can score enough points, they'll be back there. We'll see how that season goes. But all these teams, again, we could see them well into January playing. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So we'll have to have you back, Fran. Before we go, and just a reminder for everybody, if you really disagree or really agree with Fran, make sure you go let him know at F Duffy NFL. Again, maybe throw him some players that you've been impressed with, and he'll throw some eyes on there. So he's constantly looking at this 2026 draft class. The Eagles, the returning Super Bowl champs. It looked easy at times and it looked hard at times. Weather delay, week 1 versus the Cowboys. You do get the win in Philly. But are there some cracks in this return to the Super Bowl? Whether Coach Sirianni wants to talk at all about last year, it doesn't matter. We're going to, because that's what happens until you're dethroned. What did you think about Philly's week 1 performance?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, this is a team, especially on offense. Like they don't play anybody in the preseason. So the fact that Jalen Hurts came out and looked as sharp and as decisive as he did, I thought was a really good sign. I thought that he was pretty up and down through the regular season last year, and there were times where he just looked indecisive back there. And honestly, when I was watching the game on Thursday night, I'm sitting at home and I'm watching, and I'm like, all right, like it's a lot of scrambles. You don't see a lot of targets for Devontae Smith and for AJ Brown. That's the recipe of like you go back and watch the film, and you're like, oh, like turn down here, turn down there, bad decision. What? Honestly, like when I go back and I'm like, yeah, I get why he didn't throw that slant route. Like that safety's jumping that linebacker's buzzing underneath AJ Brown here. That's going to be a pick 6 going the other way. And WIP is on fire tomorrow if he makes that throw. So I actually thought that Jalen Hurts played a very decisive game. He had one ball that traveled more than 11 yards downfield. Like it wasn't an aggressive passing game attack. It wasn't an aggressive game plan, but with what he was asked to do within the structure of that offensive game plan against Dallas, I thought he did a good job. Now, I do think that they're going to have to try and see if they can find ways to dial up some more easy button, like layup type of throws for AJ and Devontae, get those guys incorporated a little bit faster, maybe be a little bit more aggressive down the field. Like I said, just one attempt, more than 11 yards. It was a beautiful ball to Jahan Dotson for 50 plus yards, but defensively is the other big one. And look, you lose Jalen Carter before the first whistle. So that's going to have an impact. Dak Prescott said after the game, like they had to change their whole protection plan. They had everything dialed up to go again to take care of Jalen Carter. But they've got some new players. They lost pieces at all 3 levels. So how those guys are going to kind of get incorporated in. I would say that there's plenty of reason to have trust in Vic Fangio and that defensive staff. one of the biggest upsets, honestly, post Super Bowl, Rodrik, was that defensive staff, which was one of the best defenses in football last year. They didn't lose one assistant. I think Christian Parker, the DB coach, you're looking at him as a future coordinator. You go up and down. Clint Hurt was a defensive coordinator in Seattle, and you look at it. There's a bunch of guys I think are going to be future, coordinators down the line. I would say that the Eagles made off well, not losing one of those assistants. So I would say put faith in that coaching staff. Whether it's corner, linebacker, edge rusher, they will get some things straightened out there.
Yeah, no, they'll get it straightened out. I can't imagine you'll lose Jalen Carter for another whole game when you're expecting him to play. Again, we won't even get into all that and all the "I told you so's" that were thrown around there with Jalen falling to where he did. Again, that's a different conversation. I think everything well known on Jalen. He had a good year last year, and I expect. Maybe he just needed a 1 week wake up call, which again certainly happened. Again, to your point on that defensive staff, again, you look at what happened in Detroit, in Green Bay to Detroit, and the way they came out and looked. Again, if you're the Eagles, you are very happy, very, we'll say, fortunate in some ways that you keep that staff together. But again, we're talking for a few NFL teams. It's not quite like it is in college. It doesn't matter quite as much right now for the Eagles. They could, again, I don't want to say they could sleepwalk some of these weeks and get wins, but they're that good of a team, that good a roster. The right guard, got to get a little bit better play out of that right guard. That was really the one spot we saw kind of some consistent pressure. For me, Dallas showed up and played the way I thought they would, better than most people expected them with Coach Schottenheimer, the Micah Parsons situation, all of that. Again, Dallas showed up and played, really credit to that staff as well. But again, Philly obviously gets it done. So again, it's going to be a fun season. Again, the expectations are sky high. The expectations are repeat for Howie, for Coach Sirianni, for that Eagles roster and Eagles staff. So again, it's going to be good luck. You get everybody's best shot when you are holding the Lombardi, which again, you wouldn't want it any other way, right?
Exactly right. And what's so fascinating too is and you mentioned like turning over every rock. They worked out Mike Hilton this week, but it feels like it's every other night. Oh, like Howie Roseman made another trade. They trade they trade for Tank Bigsby. They go and they sign Darius Smith. They make a trade here. They make a trade there. An organization that's always trying to win on the margins.
Yeah, and that is why they have 1 through 53. Again, you can certainly make the argument that they are in the conversation for best roster in the NFL. Credit Howie, credit that entire scouting staff, and credit the coaches for letting them all do their work and having the input when they need to. Well, Fran, we've hopefully everybody's still with us, but again, make sure you go follow Fran. He is at F Duffy NFL. Let him know what you like, what you think, where you're at. I am at Right Step ADV. You can always find me there. Fran, as we get into the next week, any big games? What's the one matchup you're really looking forward to next week?
Well, I'll tell you what, Oklahoma comes to Lincoln Financial Field to take on my Temple Owls on Saturday, so I will be there just to get eyes on John Mateer, and honestly, they've got players on both sides. So whether it's Jaden Ott and Deion Burks, they've got the Grayson Halton defensive tackle, they got R. Mason Thomas off the edge. So I will be in attendance for that one. I'll get there early and make sure I'm out in the field and trying to get eyes on all these guys to write up for Oklahoma. So that will be the priority, but there's some good games throughout the afternoon and night too. So I'll make sure I get back in time for those.
Good. Well, I would say, Philly fans there at the link, give them a nice Philly welcome, but I'm not exactly sure if that's a good thing or bad thing based on those Eagles fans. So again, just say hi, just wave to Fran, make sure you're following him wherever you're at, and make sure you're sharing this podcast. Fran's been a lot of fun, and you did a fantastic job in the draft room.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. I'm excited to come back again.
Awesome.